What's going on there, guys? Welcome back to 610 Football. I'm your host, Darren Healy. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for some of the best football content out on YouTube. And also make sure to hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. I'm going to be doing one of these recaps for every episode there is of the Man in the Arena. And it'd be really awesome if you could check all of them out. I was pretty interested to see how they would do this episode in terms of how they talk about the 2002 season. The documentary is really supposed to be about Brady's Super Bowl runs and like his first-hand account of them, but in 2002, not only did they not make the Super Bowl, they didn't even make the playoffs. They started out strong going 3-0, but then ended up finishing 9-7 and were just a really weak team overall. They talked about Lord Malloy coming in the the late 90s and how he just changed the culture, and then that would be important later. So going to 2003, Lord Malloy would end up getting cut before the first week, and that was mainly due to Rodney Harrison being on the team. Harrison was a really tough player during his time in San Diego, and then he came to the New England Patriots, and a lot of people were expecting for them to be like one of the best 1-2 duos at safety in the league, but Rodney just played so tough that Malloy wasn't exactly the happiest with it and practically demanded a release, and Belichick granted it, which was really a shock to a lot of people. Malloy came into the Patriots and really changed the culture. He brought a toughness that really wasn't there before, and he was also starting to develop a great relationship with Tom Brady because it was basically the two captains on both sides of the ball. Brady led the offense and Malloy led the defense. So Malloy signed with the Bills, and the Patriots and the Bills end up playing in Week 1 in Buffalo, and the Patriots got their asses kicked 31-0, and Malloy was a huge part of that. Even though he didn't have any interceptions, he was still a huge part as to why the Bills defense dominated against the Patriots offense. And I think that 31-0 shutout was like the only time Brady and Belichick had ever been shut out during their time together. I'm not too sure, but it's like either one of the only times or the only time they were ever shut out. And then following that blowout loss, there were a lot of talks about what's the culture on this team like, what's the locker room like, and they specifically mentioned Tom Jackson and how he was basically saying that Belichick has lost the locker room and he wasn't that good of a team leader. That then led to a lot of talk about mental toughness, how the team was mentally. And even though a lot of players didn't believe what Tom Jackson was saying, it did kind of bring to light, what is the mental state of this team? And it turns out it was a pretty good mental state. Even though they lost Week 2 to the Eagles, the Patriots would then go on a run and get to 9-2 at one point in the season, where they then met the Indianapolis Colts in the Circle City. And that game was an absolute shootout between Manning and Brady, who met earlier in 2001 and played also in 2002. But a classic Manning-Brady game, and it really all came down to the Colts' final drive, where Willie McGinnis made a huge play that not only won them a game, but what he says was really the difference maker of the season, and that just continued the Patriots' hot streak. They just kept on winning games, and by the time Week 17 came around, they were 13-2, had the AFC East locked up, and they also had the number 1 seed locked up. Brady also went into detail about how pivotal the 2003 season was for his development, and a lot of that came from him and Belichick growing a great relationship, mainly due to the fact that they spent a lot of time breaking down defenses. They would spend hours during the week just studying film, finding tendencies in the defenses, and that's really what helped Brady become a great quarterback. It was a lot of the talent, but his ability to read defenses came from that season, and that's what's made him so great for so long. So Week 17 comes around, the Patriots are 13-2, nothing really playoff-wise you have to play for, but there is something respect-wise you do have to play for. Week 17, they hosted the Buffalo Bills, the team that beat them 31-0 in Week 1, and well, let's just say it was the exact opposite of how Week 1 went. The Patriots ended up being the Bills in Week 17, 31-0, and just completely dismantled that defense. So then they get into the playoffs. Patriots pretty easily handled the Titans in the divisional round 17-14. Then they met the Colts again, this time in the AFC Championship game. And then this brought to light the two different situations that Brady and Manning were in early in their career. See, with Manning, it was more so that he was the reason why the Colts were doing good. He was the leader of that team. He was basically the general manager of that team also. But if the Colts won back then, it was due because Peyton Manning played so well. Whereas for the Patriots, it wasn't really Tom Brady playing all that great. I kind of detailed this in the last video, but He did play good early on in his career, but it was more so him game managing and allowing that spectacular defense and really good run game to just take over. And speaking of that spectacular defense, that's what got them the AFC Championship game victory as they dismantled the Colts, won so easily, Manning threw 4 interceptions, and for the second time in 3 years, the Patriots were on to the Super Bowl. Another theme of this episode was about the growing popularity Tom had. It was something he never really felt before. Remember, back in college, yes, he went to a big name school in Michigan, but wasn't, the most outstanding quarterback. Remember, 6th-round pick. It's not like he was, everybody's favorite college player. Now that he had won a Super Bowl and he was in a big market like New England, he was growing a lot of popularity, and he was trying not to let that change on him as a person. And a big test of that was the Super Bowl. He had to get more tickets, more passes, because he was getting more friends because of the amount of popularity he had, just because of the position he was in. So the Patriots faced off against the Carolina Panthers in Super Bowl 38, and the Panthers were a really tough team. Not that they played dirty, but they were a tough team. They were going to hit you extra hard, maybe, stuff like that. Not borderline dirty, but, they were a tough team, and the Patriots, they had to be as tough as them back, and that was going to be a real test. And for the first quarter, it was just 2 tough teams playing against each other. No points scored, and it was even like that for the majority of the second quarter. It wasn't until 3 minutes into the game that we had a touchdown on the board, and then by halftime, it was already 17-14. A big thing they talked about in the Super Bowl was Rodney Harrison breaking his wrist. He broke it on one play. They kept him in the game, and then he pushed one of the Panthers wide receivers out of bounds, and then he just hurt a crack and he could not go on. And there was a huge blow because the Patriots would end up losing their other safety also. So the Patriots were playing with, without both of their starting safeties. So this one was definitely going to be a test of how good their depth was. So late in the game, the Panthers go on a really good drive downfield that concluded with a Ricky Proehl touchdown. And I'm surprised they didn't talk about Ricky Proehl a little bit more. If you don't know who Ricky Proehl was, he was a good wide receiver. But it's really coincidental what happened in his career. He was on the Rams in 2001. He caught their touchdown in the Rams' last drive of the game. Brady then went on to have a game-winning drive. Then in 2003, he was on the Panthers. He caught the Panthers' last touchdown on the game of their last drive, and what would you know it, Tom Brady goes on another game-winning drive. And a lot of that was in help due to the kickoff going out of bounds, which I feel like is not talked about at all. The kickoff for Tom Brady's game-winning drive in Super Bowl 38 ends up going out of bounds, and that placed the ball at the 40-yard line. And I understand the Patriots ended up having an OPI call against them, but still, at the 40-yard line is fantastic field position. That's not a lot of work you have to do, especially I think it was like a minute 19, a minute 17, around that range. Having the ball at the 40-yard line is a huge advantage, and I feel like that's something that's not talked about enough. So Brady leads another great, steady game-winning drive downfield that's once again concluded by another Adam Vinatieri field goal. 2 seconds left on the clock to just flip kick it, and once again, the Patriots are Super Bowl champions for the second time in 3 years. After the victory, they kind of focused on Rodney Harrison, reflecting on his past, really owing his whole football career for his mother. He didn't really come from that wealthy as a family. It wasn't the best childhood, but he said like his whole football career was because of his mother, his whole inspiration for how he played. And I mean, it was a pretty nice moment to see. But something I find super interesting is that at the end, Brady essentially said that this 03 Patriots team was the most dominant out of any of the teams he played on, which is a little surprising. I mean, they did go 14-2. 2016, when they won the Super Bowl, they also went 14-2. But I understand the 07 Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl, but they still went 16-0 and were still really dominant. So to say that the 2003 Patriots team was the most dominant team he ever played on, came as a big surprise to me. So next episode is going to be about the Patriots taking on the Eagles in Super Bowl 39. Pretty excited to see how they produce that episode. I'm really enjoying the documentary so far. I really like the storytelling. I really like the whole way it's produced, and it's everything I want it to be. So that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on post notifications so you never miss one of these videos. Also, follow all my socials listed down in the description below. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.